Chapter 14 of Father Goriot by Honore de Balzac. Translated by Ellen Marriage. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Bruce Peary. Chapter 14. The next day was destined to be one of the most extraordinary in the annals of the Maison Vauquer. Hitherto the most startling occurrence in its tranquil existence had been the portentous, meteor-like apparition of the sham Comtesse de Lambermesnil. But the catastrophes of this great day were to cast all previous events into the shade, and supply an inexhaustible topic of conversation for Madame Vauquer and her boarders so long as she lived. In the first place, Goriot and Eugène de Rastignac both slept till close upon 11 o'clock. Madame Vauquer, who came home about midnight from the Gaîté, lay abed till 10:30. Christophe, after a prolonged slumber (he had finished Vautrin's first bottle of wine), was behindhand with his work, but Poiret and Mademoiselle Michonneau uttered no complaint, though breakfast was delayed. As for Victorine and Madame Couture, they also lay late. Vautrin went out before 8 o'clock, and only came back just as breakfast was ready. Nobody protested, therefore, when Sylvie and Christophe went up at 11:15, knocked at all the doors, and announced that breakfast was waiting. While Sylvie and the man were upstairs, Mademoiselle Michonneau, who came down first, poured the contents of the phial into the silver cup belonging to Vautrin. It was standing with the others in the bain marie that kept the cream hot for the morning coffee. The spinster had reckoned on this custom of the house to do her stroke of business. The 7 lodgers were at last collected together, not without some difficulty. Just as Eugène came downstairs, stretching himself and yawning, a commissionaire handed him a letter from Madame de Nucingen. It ran thus: "I feel neither false vanity nor anger where you are concerned, my friend. Till 2 o'clock this morning I waited for you. Oh, that waiting for one whom you love! No one that had passed through that torture could inflict it on another. I know now that you have never loved before. What can have happened? Anxiety has taken hold of me. I would have come myself to find out what had happened, if I had not feared to betray the secrets of my heart. How can I walk out or drive out at this time of day? Would it not be ruin? I have felt to the full how wretched it is to be a woman. Send a word to reassure me, and explain how it is that you have not come after what my father told you. I shall be angry, but I will forgive you. One word, for pity's sake. You will come to me soon, will you not? If you are busy, a line will be enough. Say, 'I will hasten to you,' or else 'I am ill.' But if you were ill, my father would have come to tell me so. What can have happened?" "Yes, indeed, what has happened?" exclaimed Eugène, and hurrying down to the dining room, he crumpled up the letter without reading any more. "What time is it?" 11:30, said Vautrin, dumping a lump of sugar into his coffee. The escaped convict cast a glance at Eugène, a cold and fascinating glance. Men gifted with this magnetic power can quell furious lunatics in a madhouse by such a glance, it is said. Eugène shook in every limb. There was the sound of wheels in the street, and in another moment a man with a scared face rushed into the room. It was one of Monsieur Taillefer's servants. Madame Couture recognized the livery at once. "Mademoiselle," he cried, "your father is asking for you. Something terrible has happened. Monsieur Frédéric has had a sword thrust in the forehead, in a duel, and the doctors have given him up. You will scarcely be in time to say good bye to him. He is unconscious." "Poor young fellow!" exclaimed Vautrin. "How can people brawl when they have a certain income of 30,000 livres? Young people have bad manners, and that is a fact." "Sir!" cried Eugène. "Well, what then, you big baby?" said Vautrin, swallowing down his coffee imperturbably, an operation which Mademoiselle Michonneau watched with such close attention that she had no emotion to spare for the amazing news that had struck the others dumb with amazement. "Are there not duels every morning in Paris?" added Vautrin. "I will go with you, Victorine," said Madame Couture, and the two women hurried away at once without either hats or shawls. But before she went, Victorine, with her eyes full of tears, gave Eugène a glance that said, "How little I thought that our happiness should cost me tears!" "Dear me, you are a prophet, Monsieur Vautrin," said Madame Vauquer. "I am all sorts of things," said Vautrin. "Queer, isn't it?" said Madame Vauquer, stringing together a succession of commonplaces suited to the occasion. "Death takes us off without asking us about it. The young often go before the old. It is a lucky thing for us women that we are not liable to fight duels, but we have other complaints that men don't suffer from. We bear children, and it takes a long time to get over it. What a windfall for Victorine! Her father will have to acknowledge her now." "There," said Vautrin, looking at Eugène. "Yesterday she had not a penny; this morning she has several millions to her fortune." "I say, Monsieur Eugène," cried Madame Vauquer, "you have landed on your feet." At this exclamation Father Goriot looked at the student, and saw the crumpled letter still in his hand. "You have not read it through. What does this mean? Are you going to be like the rest of them?" he asked. "Madame, I shall never marry Mademoiselle Victorine," said Eugène, turning to Madame Vauquer with an expression of terror and loathing that surprised the onlookers at this scene. Father Goriot caught the student's hand and grasped it warmly. He could have kissed it. "Oh," said Vautrin, "the Italians have a good proverb, col tempo." "Is there any answer?" said Madame de Nucingen's messenger, addressing Eugène. "Say that I will come directly." The man went. Eugène was in a state of such violent excitement that he could not be prudent. "What is to be done?" he exclaimed aloud. "There are no proofs." Vautrin began to smile. Though the drug he had taken was doing its work, the convict was so vigorous that he rose to his feet, gave Rastignac a look, and said in hollow tones, "Luck comes to us while we sleep, young man," and fell, stiff and stark, as if he were struck dead. "So there is a divine justice," said Eugène. "Well, if ever! What has come to that poor dear Monsieur Vautrin?" "A stroke!" cried Mademoiselle Michonneau. "Here, Sylvie, girl, run for the doctor," called the widow. "Oh, Monsieur Rastignac, just go for Monsieur Bianchon, and be as quick as you can. Sylvie might not be in time to catch our doctor, Monsieur Goimprel." Rastignac was glad of an excuse to leave that den of horrors. His hurry for the doctor was nothing but a flight. "Here, Christophe, go round to the chemist's and ask for something that's good for the apoplexy." Christophe likewise went. "Father Goriot, just help us to get him upstairs." Vautrin was taken up among them, carried carefully up the narrow staircase, and laid upon his bed. "I can do no good here, so I shall go to see my daughter," said Monsieur Goriot. "Selfish old thing!" cried Madame Vauquer. "Yes, go. I wish you may die like a dog." "Just go and see if you can find some ether," said Mademoiselle Michonneau to Madame Vauquer. The former, with some help from Poiret, had unfastened the sick man's clothes. Madame Vauquer went down to her room and left Mademoiselle Michonneau mistress of the situation. "Now, just pull down his shirt and turn him over, quick. You might be of some use in sparing my modesty," she said to Poiret, "instead of standing there like a stock." Vautrin was turned over. Mademoiselle Michonneau gave his shoulder a sharp slap, and the two portentous letters appeared, white against the red. "There, you have earned your 3,000 francs very easily," exclaimed Poiret, supporting Vautrin while Mademoiselle Michonneau slipped on the shirt again. "Oof! How heavy he is!" he added, as he laid the convict down. "Hush! Suppose there is a strong box here," said the old maid briskly. Her glances seemed to pierce the walls; she scrutinized every article of the furniture with greedy eyes. "Could we find some excuse for opening that desk?" "It mightn't be quite right," responded Poiret to this. "Where is the harm? It is money stolen from all sorts of people, so it doesn't belong to any one now. But we haven't time. There is the Vauquer." "Here is the ether," said that lady. "I must say that this is an eventful day. Lord, that man can't have had a stroke. He is as white as curds." "White as curds?" echoed Poiret. "And his pulse is steady," said the widow, laying her hand on his breast. "Steady?" said the astonished Poiret. "He is all right." "Do you think so?" asked Poiret. "Lord, yes, he looks as if he were sleeping. Sylvie has gone for a doctor. I say, Mademoiselle Michonneau, he is sniffing the ether. Pooh! It is only a spasm. His pulse is good, he is as strong as a Turk. Just look, mademoiselle, what a fur tippet he has on his chest. That is the sort of man to live till he is 100. His wig holds on tightly, however. Dear me, it is glued on, and his own hair is red. That is why he wears a wig. They say that red-haired people are either the worst or the best. Is he one of the good ones, I wonder?" "Good to hang," said Poiret. "Round a pretty woman's neck, you mean," said Mademoiselle Michonneau hastily. "Just go away, Monsieur Poiret. It is a woman's duty to nurse you men when you are ill. Besides, for all the good you are doing, you may as well take yourself off," she added. "Madame Vauquer and I will take great care of dear Monsieur Vautrin." Poiret went out on tiptoe without a murmur, like a dog kicked out of the room by his master. Rastignac had gone out for the sake of physical exertion. He wanted to breathe the air; he felt stifled. Yesterday evening he had meant to prevent the murder arranged for 8:30 that morning. What had happened? What ought he to do now? He trembled to think that he himself might be implicated. Vautrin's coolness still further dismayed him. Yet how if Vautrin should die without saying a word? Rastignac asked himself. He hurried along the alleys of the Luxembourg Gardens as if the hounds of justice were after him, and he already heard the baying of the pack. "Well," shouted Bianchon, "you have seen the Pilote?" The Pilote was a Radical sheet, edited by Monsieur Tissot. It came out several hours later than the morning papers, and was meant for the benefit of country subscribers, for it brought the morning news into provincial districts 24 hours sooner than the ordinary local journals. "There is a wonderful history in it," said the house student of the Hôpital Cochin. "Young Taillefer called out Count Franceschini of the Old Guard, and the Count put a couple of inches of steel into his forehead. And here is little Victorine, one of the richest heiresses in Paris. If we had known that, eh? What a game of chance death is! They say Victorine was sweet on you. Was there any truth in it?" "Shut up, Bianchon. I shall never marry her. I am in love with a charming woman, and she is in love with me, so " "You said that as if you were screwing yourself up to be faithful to her. I should like to see the woman worth the sacrifice of Master Taillefer's money." "Are all the devils of hell at my heels?" cried Rastignac. "What is the matter with you? Are you mad? Give us your hand," said Bianchon, "and let me feel your pulse. You are feverish." "Just go to Mother Vauquer's," said Rastignac. "That scoundrel Vautrin has dropped down like one dead." "Aha!" said Bianchon, leaving Rastignac to his reflections. "You confirm my suspicions, and now I mean to make sure for myself." The law student's long walk was a memorable one for him. He made in some sort a survey of his conscience. After a close scrutiny, after hesitation and self-examination, his honor, at any rate, came out scatheless from this sharp and terrible ordeal, like a bar of iron tested in the English fashion. He remembered Father Goriot's confidences of the evening before. He recollected the rooms taken for him in the Rue d'Artois, so that he might be near Delphine, and then he thought of his letter, and read it again, and kissed it. "Such a love is my anchor of safety," he said to himself. "How the old man's heart must have been wrung! He says nothing about all that he has been through, but who could not guess? Well, then, I will be like a son to him; his life shall be made happy. If she cares for me, she will often come to spend the day with him. That Grande Comtesse de Restaud is a heartless thing. She would make her father into her hall porter. Dear Delphine, she is kinder to the old man. She is worthy to be loved. Ah, this evening I shall be very happy." He took out his watch and admired it. "I have had nothing but success. If two people mean to love each other for ever, they may help each other, and I can take this. Besides, I shall succeed, and I will pay her 100-fold. There is nothing criminal in this liaison, nothing that could cause the most austere moralist to frown. How many respectable people contract similar unions? We deceive nobody. It is deception that makes a position humiliating. If you lie, you lower yourself at once. She and her husband have lived apart for a long while. Besides, how have I called upon that Alsatian to resign a wife whom he cannot make happy?" Rastignac's battle with himself went on for a long while, and though the scruples of youth inevitably gained the day, an irresistible curiosity led him, about 4:30, to return to the Maison Vauquer through the gathering dusk. Bianchon had given Vautrin an emetic, reserving the contents of the stomach for chemical analysis at the hospital. Mademoiselle Michonneau's officious alacrity had still further strengthened his suspicions of her. Vautrin, moreover, had recovered so quickly that it was impossible not to suspect some plot against the leader of all frolics at the lodging-house. Vautrin was standing in front of the stove in the dining-room when Rastignac came in. All the lodgers were assembled sooner than usual by the news of young Taillefer's duel. They were anxious to hear any detail about the affair, and to talk over the probable change in Victorine's prospects. Father Goriot alone was absent, but the rest were chatting. No sooner did Eugène come into the room than his eyes met the inscrutable gaze of Vautrin. It was the same look that had read his thoughts before, the look that had such power to waken evil thoughts in his heart. He shuddered. "Well, dear boy," said the escaped convict, "I am likely to cheat death for a good while yet. According to these ladies, I have had a stroke that would have felled an ox, and came off with flying colors." "A bull, you might say," cried the widow. "You really might be sorry to see me still alive," said Vautrin in Rastignac's ear, thinking that he guessed the student's thoughts. "You must be mighty sure of yourself." "Mademoiselle Michonneau was talking the day before yesterday about a gentleman named Trompe la Mort," said Bianchon, "and upon my word, that name would do very well for you." Vautrin seemed thunderstruck. He turned pale and staggered back. He turned his magnetic glance, like a ray of vivid light, on Mademoiselle Michonneau. The old maid shrank and trembled under the influence of that strong will, and collapsed into a chair. The mask of good nature had dropped from the convict's face. From the unmistakable ferocity of that sinister look, Poiret felt that the old maid was in danger, and hastily stepped between them. None of the lodgers understood this scene in the least; they looked on in mute amazement. There was a pause. Just then there was a sound of tramping feet outside. There were soldiers there, it seemed, for there was a ring of several rifles on the pavement of the street. Collin was mechanically looking round the walls for a way of escape, when 4 men entered by way of the sitting-room. "In the name of the King and the law," said an officer, but the words were almost lost in a murmur of astonishment. Silence fell on the room. The lodgers made way for 3 of the men, who had each a hand on a cocked pistol in a side pocket. 2 policemen, who followed the detectives, kept the entrance to the sitting-room, and 2 more men appeared in the doorway that gave access to the staircase. A sound of footsteps came from the garden, and again the rifles of several soldiers rang on the cobblestones under the window. All chance of salvation by flight was cut off for Trompe la Mort, to whom all eyes instinctively turned. The chief walked straight up to him, and commenced operations by giving him a sharp blow on the head, so that the wig fell off, and Collin's face was revealed in all its ugliness. There was a terrible suggestion of strength mingled with cunning in the short brick-red crop of hair. The whole head was in harmony with his powerful frame, and at that moment the fires of hell seemed to gleam from his eyes. In that flash the real Vautrin shone forth, revealed at once before them all. They understood his past, his present and future, his pitiless doctrines, his actions, the religion of his own good pleasure, the majesty with which his cynicism and contempt for mankind invested him, the physical strength of an organization proof against all trials. The blood flew to his face, and his eyes glared like the eyes of a wildcat. He started back with savage energy and a fierce growl that grew exclamations of alarm from the lodgers. At that leonine start, the police caught at their pistols under cover of the general clamor. Collin saw the gleaming muzzles of the weapons, saw his danger, and instantly gave proof of a power of the highest order. There was something horrible and majestic in the spectacle of the sudden transformation in his face. He could only be compared to a cauldron full of the steam that can send mountains flying, a terrific force dispelled in a moment by a drop of cold water. The drop of water that cooled his wrathful fury was a reflection that flashed across his brain like lightning. He began to smile, and looked down at his wig. "You are not in the politest of humors to-day," he remarked to the chief, and he held out his hands to the policemen with a jerk of his head. "Gentlemen," he said, "put on the bracelets or the handcuffs. I call on those present to witness that I make no resistance." A murmur of admiration ran through the room at the sudden outpouring like fire and lava flood from this human volcano, and its equally sudden cessation. "There's a cell for you, Master Crusher," the convict added, looking at the famous director of police. "Come, strip," said he of the Petite Rue Sainte Anne, contemptuously. "Why?" asked Collin. "There are ladies present. I deny nothing, and surrender." He paused and looked round the room like an orator who is about to overwhelm his audience. "Take this down, Daddy Lachapelle," he went on, addressing a little white-haired old man who had seated himself at the end of the table, and, after drawing a printed form from the portfolio, was proceeding to draw up a document. "I acknowledge myself to be Jacques Collin, otherwise known as Trompe la Mort, condemned to 20 years' penal servitude, and I have just proved that I have come fairly by my nickname. If I had as much as raised my hand," he went on, addressing the other lodgers, "those 3 sneaking wretches yonder would have drawn claret on Mamma Vauquer's domestic hearth. The rogues have laid their heads together to set a trap for me." Madame Vauquer felt sick and faint at these words. "Good Lord!" she cried, "this does give one a turn, and me at the Gaieté with him only last night," she said to Sylvie. "Summon your philosophy, mamma," Collin resumed. "Is it a misfortune to have sat in my box at the Gaieté yesterday evening? After all, are you better than we are? The brand upon our shoulders is less shameful than the brand set on your hearts, you flabby members of a society rotten to the core. Not the best man among you could stand up to me." His eyes rested on Rastignac, to whom he spoke with a pleasant smile that seemed strangely at variance with the savage expression in his eyes. "Our little bargain still holds good, dear boy. You can accept any time you like. Do you understand?" And he sang, "A charming girl is my Fanchette, in her simplicity." "Don't you trouble yourself," he went on. "I can get in my money. They are too much afraid of me to swindle me." The convict's prison, its language and customs, its sudden sharp transitions from the humorous to the horrible, its appalling grandeur, its triviality and its dark depths, were all revealed in turn by the speaker's discourse. He seemed to be no longer a man, but the type and mouthpiece of a degenerate race, a brutal, supple, clear-headed race of savages. In one moment Collin became the poet of an inferno, wherein all thoughts and passions that move human nature, save repentance, find a place. He looked about him like a fallen archangel who is for war to the end. Rastignac lowered his eyes and acknowledged this kinship claimed by crime as an expiation of his own evil thoughts. "Who betrayed me?" said Collin, and his terrible eyes traveled round the room. Suddenly they rested on Mademoiselle Michonneau. "It was you, old cat," he said. "That sham stroke of apoplexy was your doing, lynx eyes. 2 words from me, and your throat would be cut in less than a week. But I forgive you. I am a Christian. You did not sell me either. But who did? Aha! You may rummage upstairs," he shouted, hearing the police officers opening his cupboards and taking possession of his effects. "The nest is empty, the birds flew away yesterday, and you will be none the wiser. My ledgers are here," he said, tapping his forehead. "Now I know who sold me. It could only be that blackguard Fil de Soie. That is who it was, old catchpole, eh?" he said, turning to the chief. "It was timed so neatly to get the bank notes up above there. There is nothing left for you, spies. As for Fil de Soie, he will be under the daisies in less than a fortnight, even if you were to tell off the whole force to protect him. How much did you give the Michonnette?" he asked of the police officers. 1,000 crowns? Oh, you Ninon in decay, Pompadour in tatters, Venus of the graveyard, I was worth more than that. If you had given me warning, you should have had 6,000 francs. Ah, you had no suspicion of that, old trafficker in flesh and blood, or I should have had the preference. Yes, I would have given 6,000 francs to save myself an inconvenient journey and some loss of money," he said, as they fastened the handcuffs on his wrists. "These folks will amuse themselves by dragging out this business till the end of time to keep me idle. If they were to send me straight to jail, I should soon be back at my old tricks, in spite of the duffers at the Quai des Orfèvres. Down yonder they will all turn themselves inside out to help their general, their good Trompe la Mort, to get clear away. Is there a single one among you that can say, as I can, that he has 10,000 brothers ready to do anything for him?" he asked proudly. "There is some good there," he said, tapping his heart. "I have never betrayed any one. Look you here, you slut," he said to the old maid. "They are all afraid of me, do you see? But the sight of you turns them sick. Rake in your gains." He was silent for a moment and looked round at the lodgers' faces. "What dolts you are, all of you! Have you never seen a convict before? A convict of Collin's stamp, whom you see before you, is a man less weak-kneed than others. He lifts up his voice against the colossal fraud of the social contract, as Jean Jacques did, whose pupil he is proud to declare himself. In short, I stand here single-handed against a government and a whole subsidized machinery of tribunals and police, and I am a match for them all." "Ye gods!" cried the painter, "what a magnificent sketch one might make of him!" "Look here, you gentlemen in waiting to His Highness the Gibbet, Master of Ceremonies to the Widow," a nickname full of sombre poetry given by prisoners to the guillotine. "Be a good fellow and tell me if it really was Fil de Soie who sold me. I don't want him to suffer for some one else; that would not be fair." But before the chief had time to answer, the rest of the party returned from making their investigations upstairs. Everything had been opened and inventoried. A few words passed between them and the chief, and the official preliminaries were complete. "Gentlemen," said Collin, addressing the lodgers, "they will take me away directly. You have all made my stay among you very agreeable, and I shall look back upon it with gratitude. Receive my adieu, and permit me to send you figs from Provence." He advanced a step or two, and then turned to look once more at Rastignac. "Good bye, Eugene," he said in a sad and gentle tone, a strange transition from his previous rough and stern manner. "If you should be hard up, I have left you a devoted friend. and in spite of his shackles, he managed to assume a posture of defence, called 1, 2, like a fencing master, and lunged. If anything goes wrong, apply in that quarter. Man and money, all at your service. The strange speaker's manner was sufficiently burlesque so that no one but Rastignac knew that there was a serious meaning underlying the pantomime. As soon as the police, soldiers, and detectives had left the house, Sylvie, who was rubbing her mistress's temples with vinegar, looked round at the bewildered lodgers. "Well," said she, "he was a man, he was, for all that." Her words broke the spell. Every one had been too much excited, too much moved by very various feelings to speak. But now the lodgers began to look at each other, and then all eyes were turned at once on Mademoiselle Michonneau, a thin, shriveled, dead-alive, mummy-like figure crouching by the stove. Her eyes were downcast, as if she feared that the green eye-shade could not shut out the expression of those faces from her. This figure and the feeling of repulsion she had so long excited were explained all at once. A smothered murmur filled the room. It was so unanimous that it seemed as if the same feeling of loathing had pitched all the voices in one key. Mademoiselle Michonneau heard it and did not stir. It was Bianchon who was the first to move. He bent over his neighbor and said in a low voice: "If that creature is going to stop here and have dinner with us, I shall clear out." In the twinkling of an eye, it was clear that every one in the room, save Poiret, was of the medical student's opinion, so that the latter, strong in the support of the majority, went up to that elderly person. "You are more intimate with Mademoiselle Michonneau than the rest of us," he said. "Speak to her. Make her understand that she must go, and go at once." "At once?" echoed Poiret in amazement. Then he went across to the crouching figure and spoke a few words in her ear. "I have paid beforehand for the quarter. I have as much right to be here as any one else," she said, with a viperous look at the boarders. "Never mind that. We will club together and pay you the money back," said Rastignac. "Monsieur is taking Collin's part," she said, with a questioning, malignant glance at the law student. "It is not difficult to guess why." Eugene started forward at the words as if he meant to spring upon her and wring her neck. That glance, and the depths of treachery that it revealed, had been a hideous enlightenment. "Let her alone!" cried the boarders. Rastignac folded his arms and was silent. "Let us have no more of Mademoiselle Judas," said the painter, turning to Madame Vauquer. "If you don't show the Michonneau the door, madame, we shall all leave your shop, and wherever we go, we will say that there are only convicts and spies left there. If you do the other thing, we will hold our tongues about the business; for when all is said and done, it might happen in the best society, until they brand them on the forehead when they send them to the hulks. They ought not to let convicts go about Paris disguised like decent citizens, so as to carry on their antics like a set of rascally humbugs, which they are." At this, Madame Vauquer recovered miraculously. She sat up and folded her arms. Her eyes were wide open now, and there was no sign of tears in them. "Why, do you really mean to be the ruin of my establishment, my dear sir? There is Monsieur Vautrin. Goodness!" she cried, interrupting herself, "I can't help calling him by the name he passed himself off by for an honest man. There is one room to let already, and you want me to turn out 2 more lodgers in the middle of the season, when no one is moving." "Gentlemen, let us take our hats and go and dine at Flicoteaux's in the Place Sorbonne," cried Bianchon. Madame Vauquer glanced round and saw in a moment on which side her interest lay. She waddled across to Mademoiselle Michonneau. "Come now," she said, "you would not be the ruin of my establishment, would you, eh? There's a dear, kind soul. You see what a pass these gentlemen have brought me to. Just go up to your room for this evening." "Never a bit of it!" cried the boarders. "She must go, and go this minute." "But the poor lady has had no dinner," said Poiret with piteous entreaty. "She can go and dine where she likes," shouted several voices. "Turn her out, the spy! Turn them both out! Spies!" "Gentlemen," cried Poiret, his heart swelling with the courage that love gives to the ovine male, "respect the weaker sex." "Spies are of no sex," said the painter. "A precious sexorama! Turn her into the streetorama." "Gentlemen, this is not manners. If you turn people out of the house, it ought not to be done so unceremoniously and with no notice at all. We have paid our money, and we are not going," said Poiret, putting on his cap and taking a chair beside Mademoiselle Michonneau, with whom Madame Vauquer was remonstrating. "Naughty boy!" said the painter with a comical look. "Run away, naughty little boy!" "Look here," said Bianchon, "if you do not go, all the rest of us will." And the boarders, to a man, made for the sitting room door. "Oh, mademoiselle, what is to be done?" cried Madame Vauquer. "I am a ruined woman. You can't stay here. They will go further, do something violent." Mademoiselle Michonneau rose to her feet. "She is going! She's not going! She is going! No, she isn't!" These alternate exclamations, and a suggestion of hostile intentions, borne out by the behavior of the insurgents, compelled Mademoiselle Michonneau to take her departure. She made some stipulations, speaking in a low voice in her hostess's ear, and then, "I shall go to Madame Bunot's," she said, with a threatening look. "Go where you please, mademoiselle," said Madame Vauquer, who regarded this choice of an opposition establishment as an atrocious insult. "Go and lodge with the Bunots. The wine would give a cat the colic, and the food is cheap and nasty." The boarders stood aside in two rows to let her pass. Not a word was spoken. Poiret looked so wistfully after Mademoiselle Michonneau, and so artlessly revealed that he was in two minds whether to go or stay, that the boarders, in their joy at being quit of Mademoiselle Michonneau, burst out laughing at the sight of him. "Tst, tst, tst, Poiret!" shouted the painter. "Hallo! I say, Poiret, hallo!" The employe from the museum began to sing. "Partons pour la cerie, la Gêne et Beau Dunois." "Get along with you, you must be dying to go." "Trahit sua quemque voluptas," said Bianchon. "Every one to his taste," free rendering from Virgil, said the tutor. Mademoiselle Michonneau made a movement as if to take Poiret's arm, with an appealing glance that he could not resist. The two went out together, the old maid leaning upon him, and there was a burst of applause, followed by peals of laughter. "Bravo, Poiret! Who would have thought it of old Poiret? Apollo Poiret, Mars Poiret, intrepid Poiret!" A messenger came in at that moment with a letter for Madame Vauquer, who read it through and collapsed in her chair. "The house might as well be burned down at once," cried she, "if there are to be any more of these thunderbolts. Young Taillefer died at 3 o'clock this afternoon. It serves me right for wishing well to those ladies at that poor man's expense. Madame Couture and Victorine want me to send their things, because they are going to live with her father. Monsieur Taillefer allows his daughter to keep old Madame Couture as her lady companion. 4 rooms to let, and 5 lodgers gone." She sat up and seemed about to burst into tears. "Bad luck has come to lodge here, I think," she cried. Once more there came a sound of wheels from the street outside. "What, another windfall for somebody?" was Sylvie's comment. But it was Goriot who came in, looking so radiant, so flushed with happiness, that he seemed to have grown young again. "Goriot in a cab!" cried the boarders. "The world is coming to an end." The good soul made straight for Eugene, who was standing wrapped in thought in a corner, and laid a hand on the young man's arm. "Come," he said, with gladness in his eyes. "Then you haven't heard the news?" said Eugene. "Vautrin was an escaped convict. They have just arrested him, and young Taillefer is dead." "Very well, but what business is it of ours?" replied Father Goriot. "I am going to dine with my daughter in your house, do you understand? She is expecting you. Come." He carried off Rastignac with him by main force, and they departed in as great a hurry as a pair of eloping lovers. "Now let us have dinner," cried the painter, and every one drew his chair to the table. "Well, I never!" said the portly Sylvie. "Nothing goes right to day. The haricot mutton has caught. Bah! You will have to eat it, burned as it is, more's the pity." Madame Vauquer was so dispirited that she could not say a word as she looked round the table and saw only 10 people where 18 should be. But every one tried to comfort and cheer her. At first, the dinner contingent, as was natural, talked about Vautrin and the day's events; but the conversation wound round to such topics of interest as duels, jails, justice, prison life, and alterations that ought to be made in the laws. They soon wandered miles away from Jacques Collin and Victorine and her brother. There might be only 10 of them, but they made noise enough for 20. Indeed, there seemed to be more of them than usual. That was the only difference between yesterday and to-day. Indifference to the fate of others is a matter of course in this selfish world, which, on the morrow of tragedy, seeks among the events of Paris for a fresh sensation for its daily renewed appetite, and this indifference soon gained the upper hand. Madame Vauquer herself grew calmer under the soothing influence of hope, and the mouthpiece of hope was the portly Sylvie. End of chapter 14.